All right, welcome to my video, and I'm going to be releasing a few of these small videos in order to sort of speed up the pace and provide you with enough information so that when you do sign up for one of my mentorship program sessions, there's a lot of ideas that need to be covered. Some of them are somewhat repetitive, but very, very important. Because obviously, without the knowledge of some base information that you would need, it's going to prevent you from moving forward. So I figured I'd put together a few instructional videos that would speak about certain things such as color, composition, materials. And today, one of the focuses I'd like to cover, one of the topics would definitely be composition. So what I'm going to do is we're going to proceed, and I'll be showing you certain examples of what makes up a strong composition in an image. And what I'll be doing is referencing artists that you particularly already know of, and probably have seen their paintings for quite a number of times, but I've never really been aware of what is going on within the picture plane until I actually point it out to you. So let us begin. This over here, all right, as you can see my hands, this is one of my images that I've done using acrylic paint markers. They're actually paints as in markers, and recently I decided to work from home for a little while. I had sort of reorganized my studio at home to do some work, and I decided to create a series of paintings, of course always related to flowers and nature, which is something that I really love. But we're not here to talk about my work at this very moment. We are here to talk about composition, so let's begin, all right? So this is my iPad, that's me, hello. And there we go. Let us begin with this, and give me a second. We are in. And I'm currently using a program called Procreate, and Procreate is just an awesome tool for artists who want to doodle at home and do something. But what I've done is I've uploaded a few images of some painters that you'll probably recognize, and in this case, one of my favorites is Cézanne, for many reasons, in particular for his unique approach and in redefining the concepts of what painting actually was. And we can talk all about that in a separate video. But in short, he basically turned the art world on its feet and came in with theories and ways of working that really revolutionized modern art. So I would probably consider him as the granddaddy of the all daddies of modern art. So let's begin. And let me show you, first of all, when we talk about composition, one of the most important elements of knowing what to do with your canvas is what we would call the rule of thirds. Okay, and here very clearly we can see that Cézanne has understood the rule of thirds in the way that he divides his canvas into 3 equal parts. Okay, we can see it very distinctively. Then there's see how this apple is on this side? That apple, because of the weight that it carries, divides the canvas right here. And then because the cluster is here, we've divided the canvas into thirds, as you can see right here. Okay. So this makes for a very interesting composition because in general, when you decide, and remember, these are canons, and then you can sort of come in and work on your own. But as a general rule, in order to keep your composition strong and the structure very interesting, when you divide it into thirds, as you can see, once I've put the grid line, it becomes very clear to you as to what exactly it was that he had done. And most of the weight of the apples are resting on below the 1/3 surface, which is over here, and then the other part above the 1/3 surface. It's a very tricky composition because there is space between over here, okay? What does that do? Well, basically what it does is it creates what we call in the painting a tension, okay? This tension if you were to see it as groups of people, let's say this would be a face, and this would be another face, this would be another person, another one here, are basically communicating with these guys. Let's put them this way so that, all right? So it could be a pleasant communication, it can be an aggressive communication. Well, in this case, it's quite pleasant and passive because there's no real sense of movement. Although there is a slight movement, and I'll show you where it is. But what it does is it definitely divides the room from here to here, and it leaves space for open dialogue. You see that? So this space where the objects exist, because remember, the object cannot exist without the space, is where they land. Okay, and this is where they land over here also. So the space in between really helps to outline and delineate the form of the object. Now in this case, Cezanne, he broke some rules and he basically actually came in, and I'll zoom in for you, with this little black line. You see this line all around over here? Okay. This is a process of, basically it's been used in painting for a very long time to delineate the actual subject from the background. And in so doing, okay, he's accentuated it and hasn't really taken the time to blend it into the actual object. It actually forms its own, I would say, line and object in and of itself, and is almost like a separate part of the actual object, rendering this piece fairly contemporary because it's still being used today, obviously, and it doesn't look like it's out of date. So that line, the way it delineates the form, accentuates the actual shape of the object ever more so and speaks of its character. Now, let me remove a few of these lines that we probably don't need here. And let's go back to that. So we understand that there's a sort of tension that's been created, and that the outline, which is this one over here, I'll point this out again, okay, helps to define the form even more. Okay, so I'll remove that. The other interesting thing about it also is that if you take a look at this, he then divides this third, okay, into another third. And if you look at this right here, the top part, okay, here's another division that gets created within this third that's going on over here, further causing even more tension in the painting, thereby almost like it sort of, well, he's suggesting, obviously, he's suggesting that there's something going on beyond the table. There's a suggestion that it's not just about the platform or the table, it actually goes beyond. And the way he creates a sense of movement is that if you take a look carefully, the angle at which it's represented, you see, it's not direct line across as a horizontal, but the horizontal is slightly tilted. And as soon as you tilt something, okay, what happens, and you put a round object on a tilted platform, you start to think that the apples are going to roll off the table. But they don't. You see, this is very clever on this part, they don't. Because what's holding them down? Well, what's holding them down? Let me remove that. What's holding them down is shadow, okay? And then we also have the line, this heavy line. You see this outline once again comes in to hold the apples together. Of course, they're in a cluster, so obviously the cluster in itself is holding it together. Remember, if these were two groups of people, we now have a group and a group. They are huddled together. So the apples themselves represent, I guess, let's break it down into a tribe, and they stick together, right? They're not going anywhere else. So it's a very clever sort of communication that's being established between the 2 points. And the other part that's also starting to happen, I'm going to take your eye down to this area over here, which is very interesting. You see how there's a triangle from this end over here, you see? And it goes like this. See, there's a natural triangle that's been formed, okay? And then we have a block, like a rectangle right here. See that rectangle? Now the rectangle doesn't go off to the apple. It actually makes a conjunction with the apple and sort of ends over here. So again, we're implying that there's another shape that is holding the apple in its place. It's preventing the apple from moving out of the canvas. It's not going anywhere. Even though we have a steep decline, okay, it's not moving. But remember, we also have a steep or semi-steep incline. This one is going this way. Why is it going this way, and why is this going this way? All right. Well, it's very simple. Let me choose another color. Well, it's not that simple, but I'll choose another color anyway. We'll go with this one. The eye in Western culture, we read from here to here, and then we come around this way. Notice, see the steep of the angle? And then we pick up right here, we go around the apple, and we go right back up again. This wall right here allows us to move right back up again. So what we've done is the law of thirds clearly separates the painting into threes, but within each square, we've now created a sense of movement, all right? And so within the three, there's a separation, and the separation is created by the movement. Within this one, there's another movement, and within this one, there's more movement. So everything gets divided and halved continuously, all right? So let me remove these magenta lines. Okay, so we can go back to that. There we go. Once again, your eye reads from left to right. So we stop here. Then we jump, because obviously there's space. This is what we call a rest. It's kind of like a resting for your eyes. Okay? Then we jump from here, we give it a little break, and we pick up again. Now there's a lot of speed suddenly that just picks up. Like you can feel that speed. And then it picks up again, and here we rest once again. I mean, we can also rest here, or we can rest here. But from my observation, this movement is so tight that once we get here, we are back up looking at this apple again. So I think it's very interesting how he plays this all up for us, and without realizing it, he creates a really beautiful masterpiece of a painting. Another thing that he also works with in terms of another element of composition is what we call the diagonals. And you can very clearly see there's a diagonal here and there's a diagonal here. Now, you may want to tighten the diagonal, you may want to make it larger, but in this case, he made the diagonal fairly large, somewhat aggressive on this end and somewhat passive on this end. The other interesting part about Cézanne and the way he would work is that in creating the sense of space, and there's a sort of tension because of the slight diagonal that's been placed here. Remember, most paintings that were still lifes were on a flat plateau, and they were presented in a very polite manner, or poised. There's nothing poised here. The apples look a little bit beaten up, or if they're peaches, they look a little beaten up. We can't really tell what they are, you see. We just know that they're fruit, they're round, they have a multitude of colors. They're possibly on the table that, rather than the picture plane being this way, he's lifted the picture plane. Rather than being flat, he's slanted it up this way. So all these were very unconventional ways of painting. Today we just look at it and we take it for granted. But you have to keep in mind that this is very, very new, and it was considered extremely modern at the time. Okay, so I will remove this. Take your screenshot if you need it. And let's move on to the next example that I'd like to show you. Let's clear for this. All right, and there we go. Let's go back now to looking at the image, all right, without anything that I've written, and see if we can still see all of that. Do you see it? Very clever. Obviously another way of using composition, and these are all points that we can get into, but for now I really just want to talk about the balance and the placement. But remember, there's contrast, there's shape, scale. There's actually 12 basic elements to consider in your design and composition. But today I just want to work really with what we'll call the golden spiral, the rule of thirds, which I've shown you right now. And as other things come up, we'll discuss it. But the 12 basic elements of designs to consider will be balance, line, color, negative space, harmony, hierarchy, texture, typography, contrast, scale, shape, and emphasis. We will cover all of those. So let's go take a look at another one of his masterpieces. And yeah, let's focus on this one over here. This one looks very interesting to me. So here we are again. First of all, can you spot the golden selection or the rule of thirds? Let's take a look at that. Let's go choose a less ghastly color, and white in this case works. Immediately my eye obviously goes to this area over here. Let me just increase the line so you see it. This area right here. Immediately my eye also goes to this area right here. Okay. Why not this area and why not these areas? Well, here's your main focus right here. See? There's your focus. Everything here in the background, okay, and you'll notice that this is bright and this is subdued, purposely done, so that the focus really goes towards the front and less goes towards the back. Okay, and the back is really a placeholder so that the foreground can jump at you. All right. So what he's doing here is, remember, he's always creating a sense of movement without really implying movement. He's also creating a sense of time. We read from left to right. So within the movement, there's also the past, the present, and the future that is happening. Right? Remember that. There's also the introduction, okay, of an element such as a room divider, which is what it looks like over here, and a tablecloth. So what does that mean? That means that somebody had to have placed the room divider there, almost sort of like a mystery detective novel, and that somebody placed the tablecloth, right? So there was the element of the human touch in this painting, which renders it curious, mysterious, and also approachable, right? It's not this very stylic view, and on top of that, we also have this movement. So let's go back. So you've gotten this figured out, that basically that is the focal point. But if you look at it again, we've broken this down into thirds. We do have a line that's over here, which is not as emphasized, and it picks up over here. But primarily the ones that really stand out to me is this line over here and this line over here. Okay? Now, it's less of a third, but this is what we would call the golden selection composition. All right? And the golden selection is because it's quite evident that the golden selection rests within here. Everything else within this composition, okay, everything else, all of this, all of this, all of this, this, and this, are what I call the supporting cast, okay? These are, like I always say in my workshops, when you have a movie, you need the main character, X marks the spot, and you need all the supporting characters that give value to the main character. All right, so the supporting characters in this case come in the shape of a room divider. They come in the shape of a tablecloth. Okay, it comes in the shape of texture. All right, it comes in the shape of a table. These are all the supporting characters that give value to the actual main character. The main character, what does the main character have? The main character is clearly defined by using a line. The main character is colorful. The main character is prominent. The main character has the audacity to be in the forefront of the image. You see that? The supporting cast are vital, very important roles, but they're a little more quiet. They're a little more quiet in your picture plane. So now we're going to get to the actual structure of the painting, and let's go back to this ghastly color, which I love, by the way. I love that pink. So we read left to right. So how does it work in this situation? Well, it works very well because we are actually entering the picture plane from this opening over here, and we're immediately carried over to this side. This angle carries us here, so it prevents us from leaving. Remember, we read from left to right. Then we are lifted this way. This curve, okay, brings our eye right across. It does that. But at the same time, we have a very strong triangle. You see that diagonal again? There it is again. Which just drops our eye right here. But we don't go off the page because this little resting place and this little angle carry us right into here. Fairly quick movement. And we don't fall off the picture plane. like right here, you see, we are immediately brought right back up again. And then of course with these two elements and this shape right here, do you see that right here? Let me redo that again. You see this right here? Okay, let me do it again. Right here, we are brought right back into here again. Now we say, well, we're going to leave by the room divider. You can't, because this diagonal is pressing you down, forcing you to stay here. This line right here, where the room divider is split in half, forces you here. These horizontal lines drag your eye across. This line will push you down, this one right here, from the edge of the, and then of course you're picked up again. You have another curve here. Very clever in composition. Okay? So let's move on. I'll take a screenshot of this. All right. So remember, this one over here dealt with, the first one we did was the rule of thirds, and this one is what I call the golden section. And remember, the golden section was within here. Okay, golden section, and then rather than it be divided into three equal parts, rule of thirds, we do have it divided into three, but as you can see, they're asymmetrical. All right. And what it happens is that a lot of the focus ends up being within this picture plane over here. Think of your own peripheral vision, where when you're looking at something, your vision goes here to the center, but everything off to the side sort of becomes blurry. And Cézanne did that very well, like by actually using his brushstrokes in this way, where he would actually blur the image around it. You see, this is blurry. It's not finished to an extreme amount of detail. It's left quite blurry. Now, in comparison, if you were to take this and compare it to here, you can see that the apples are rather sharp. So this is all purposely done. This is not by haphazard. You just happen to come across the painting and you decide to do it this way. This is specifically designed for the artist. He has the intent to tell a story and to keep your eye within the parameter. All right? Okay, so let's move on to something else. I really don't want to bore you with any of this. And let's go and tackle, let's see how it holds up with one of his, yeah, let's try the landscape. I think the landscape with the golden section right here. Actually, this also works with the golden spiral, but let's begin with the golden section and begin again the way we were before. And here we go. All right, so we're going to divide this into third. There's my first one that I see. Let me just, okay. Sorry about my hand going across, but you can see it this way. Here's another third, approximately about here. This is a little tricky, but I would say, here we go. You see that? Okay, you see that line? And then I would say probably over here. So here we have, again, the golden section where the focus is over here. Okay, we've got these beautiful towering trees over here, okay, that form almost like a wall. And remember, look at this, okay, let's see this over here, it's pointing in. See this angle? It's pointing in. See this? It's pointing towards this. And of course we have it here again. So there's, again, once again, there's no escaping. And you are immediately led into the painting, picked up again. You go over and around the trees. And then this point brings you to this point. This reflection brings you to this reflection. All right. And then similar in tone, remember the light also carries, this is another design element, all right, and it's the element of emphasis and color, all right, so this is another element that will carry you forward this way, and then these little squiggly horizontal lines will carry you right back into here. In this case over here, especially when you're doing a lot of landscape, these dark areas, which is what I would call like the sort of important dead areas for the eye to rest, this contrast over here allows for the light, okay, to be seen. And this is how you carry the eye across the painting, right? Too much of this will not work in your favor, and too much of light will not work in your favor. It has to be perfectly balanced. This again is what is called, in terms of composition, the golden section, okay? And now let's go back to another one of his, here, let's try this one. Let's see where he was at with this. It's just brilliant. Love his work. So here we have division over here. Okay, we have another division over here. He pretty much used very similar composition elements. And there we have it again. Okay. Interesting part in here is you come in this way. Now look at the angle of the field, how you're dropped. Now look at this tree, okay? You see that? The actual tree drops you here. Then this fence carries you this way. And then this little part here, okay? This part here carries you back up again. You see that? So you are going in and you're not escaping. If you decide to leave at some point and you're like, well, I'm getting out of here. All right, well, let me follow the houses. So you follow the houses. The houses still lead you to this tree, still drop you over here, still goes over here. Well, I don't want to go that far. I'm going to leave this way. All right, well, you're going to go in this way. And now what starts to happen, okay, and this is really interesting, is what we call the golden spiral. All right, now the golden spiral in this case is very effective because it does this and it does this. Boom! Let's talk about the golden spiral. Okay, so let's go back to that element once again, and let me repeat that. So you read left to right. You come in this way. You pick up on some of the slope of the hill. You are stopped from here, you're brought back down here again, pick up over here, and you drop and you're led back up again. Okay? At the same time, it's also called the golden spiral because most of the focus is in here. And the golden spiral works better on a horizontal rather than a square, but in this case, he started to move things around enough so that the focus is central. Remember, your whole goal is to make the painting interesting, but the way you do it is by dividing the painting into sections that are not equal in size and that force the eye to maintain sort of like its movement within the canvas. So you don't want the viewer to leave. It's almost like asking the viewer, if the movie's not interesting halfway through, they're just going to leave, and you don't want that. You want your viewer to stay all the way to the end. The other part that I really like is, like, even though he's got these little fence posts that are going this way, he makes sure that you stay in the picture plane once again by offering these angles. You see? Okay? So these are all elements that you can take into account. The color scheme obviously is very clever. You have these little whites that are jumping around, and you have sort of like these off-whites here, off-whites here. All these are part of the design elements of color in helping to keep your composition sturdy. So let's go back to the gallery, and I'll be wrapping this up shortly. I wanted to, all right, let's focus on, here, let's take a look at these. So we're going to move on now to, so that was Cézanne. Let's look at the last one of Cézanne, which is a portrait. And I'm going to go in directly with the pink color in this case. And we're going to look at certain elements that are starting to play. So let's look at the rule of thirds. Clearly, there's a very strong rule of thirds. And here we go. 1, number 2. And I can see where his hand rests. And you can see where his shoulders are. Look at that. Just brilliant. So everything is sectioned off where it needs to be. Okay, this is by design. His gaze is looking this way. His angle of the arm is going this way. It suddenly turns this way, picks up where his leg is, goes this way. This line carries you back up again. You're not leaving the picture plane, you see. And then this angle carries you back up, and you are back where you started. Same thing starts to happen, which is a triangle, as you can see here. And the triangle is another one, or what we call the pyramid. This comes up a lot in Renaissance painting and is used very strongly in portraiture because what it does is it really stabilizes, as you can see, the person. He's not wobbling, he's not falling off to one side, he's stable. And of course, the other triangle within a triangle comes in within here. So triangles are probably the strongest, they are the strongest geometric form out there. And so it's very cleverly used in this case over here, as you can see that. So we have elements of little boxes, okay? And within this box, we have this thing over here, which we're not quite sure what it is. It's ill-defined. But we have a lot of elements that are ill-defined over here and sort of blurring in the background, because if you take a look at everything, what he really wants you to focus on is the hands, and then the face, and then this element over here. Now, look at this clever way of manipulating. So you have the triangle right here of the face. You then have the triangle right here. You see that? Oh, thunder. And then you have the triangle right here of a shirt, okay, which meets with the triangle. It's pointing you back up here, so it's very centrally focused once again. Just brilliant. And then of course we have something in his hands, and Cezanne loved to tell a story, just loved to tell a story. We can't really make out what's going on over here, but we know that something is happening. We don't quite know what. Prominent man in a business suit sitting with his leg crossed. His legs are not open. He's not tired. He looks poised. He looks pensive. He looks almost like a businessman. He's holding sheets of paper in there. So he's not moving yet. However, the painting in itself has an incredible amount of movement. And this is another element of composition that we can look at. And I'm slowly going to remove some of these lines over here. We'll keep some of them in. But what is happening, which I really find intriguing, and this obviously was sort of like the foray into contemporary art. And if you take a look at the Kooning, there's a lot of this sort of element in there, where we start to see that things are starting to move this way. See, there's a sense of movement. Lines are broken. They are forced and then softened and forced and softened and forced again. The line goes across, and then it's suddenly, rather than it continue on this way, it's sort of lifted. You see how these are sort of like off from one another? Softer line, softer, and then he emphasizes the line right here. And then he curves it, and then emphasizes the line again. So he's basically repeating the hard, soft, and this is soft, hard again. And that in itself creates the movement. So think of it this way, like you're driving, you're stopping, you're driving, you're stopping, you're driving, you're stopping. Okay? So there's this jerky element to it. But yeah, what keeps it all together and gives it sort of a passive look is the fact that everything around him is solid. There's a geometric force around here that's keeping this figure in place. And the other part also, of course, and we'll talk about that after, are the eyes. He clearly understood that he painted what he saw. And from a certain distance, you cannot see the model's eyes. To have to put in the actual pupils would almost be ridiculous, because it would be, you can't see it. So just trust what it is that you see and paint it the way that you see it. It actually gives more character to the subject, and actually gives an air of mystery at the same time, of course. So we're wondering who he is, and that's very cleverly done by just sort of putting in the eyes as two small dots over there. There should be some definition, of course, to certain elements, okay, but it's not clearly defined, and that just adds more to the story. Now let's move on. Another brilliant master, and let's talk about Matisse. This is one of my favorite paintings amongst many of Matisse, and in this clever way of using contrasting color. Remember that color, harmony, textures, and scale are some of the 12 design elements in your composition. So let's get right into it. So here we go once again. All right, here we go once again. All right. And here we go about this height, and here we go, I would say probably around this height over here. But what we have is a left to right reading. So we are moving across, this line picks us up, and red, dark green. So we jump from here to here. red is such a strong, powerful color that we can't help but jump into this area over here. And as soon as we read this red, we are brought right in there. In any case, we have a track right here on the shoulder. You see, this is leading us up. Okay, and then we read her face, and then we are brought back down again. We are brought back down again, and then okay, let me go over here. You know, because I will want to know. All right, well then we're brought back up again. So now we are contained. There's that triangle again, and there's that triangle in portraiture. You see that? All right, and so here's another triangle in the actual gown. But we decide we want to leave this picture plane, and well, I'm done with her. I sort of want to explore her dress. Well, then he carries us. He doesn't just draw it this way, like straight. He actually curves it, gives a slight curve. And in order for us to not fall off the picture plane, he accentuates actually this area, and he kills or deadens, mutes the colors here. So we don't stay here too long. Remember, this is what we call the rest area, right? This is where we rest. But we're so frenetic about it, and we love this painting so much, we immediately head towards the light. And once again, the light captures us and brings us back towards there. Her face is again the same element as the Cézanne painting. We don't really see too much of detail. We have a sense of structure. Okay, keep that in mind. It's very important that the nose not be drawn upside down, or the personalities will drown. And we can see basically there's a pensive feeling to her. She's not looking directly at us. She's looking this way. You see that? She's looking off to the side. And of course, that is part of the element of what captures us. So we drop back into the painting and around we go. All right, next. And let's take a look at this one. It looks very simple, but it's a very complicated painting. First of all, once again, boom, where the elbow ends, right here, and here, and here. All right. So you can probably see it by now. And we're in, we are up, we form a triangle in the face. This curve right here, central curve, is where the story begins. We don't know much about her, but there's a sensuality to her. She's wise because the eyes are drawn larger. Okay, remember, she can pierce with those eyes. She can look right at you, and she is looking at you. She's contemplative. See the little finger right here? She's leaning into her hand. She's not aggressive in any way, but there is something about her. There's a mystery. Remember also, symbolically, these little sinewy hair strands also are representational of a serpent. Okay. And that can also be biblical depending where you're coming from. Okay. So there is also that element. And then we have the blouse, and of course this arm that carries us up. And once we're here, we take the fast string back up again, and here we are back once again. Triangle formation, see that? And we're not escaping the picture plane because we have she is being framed and contained by her chair. Okay, that's it. Beautiful composition and its simplicity. This is the beginning of true abstraction with a minimalist content. Matisse was just brilliant in starting to bring that to us. And the one that I really enjoy looking at, I mean, I really love this one, but we won't cover it for now because it's starting to get a little complicated. And but this really covers the other part of design elements. Matisse was a very strong designer in his paintings, and you can see here that texture, line weight, and color is a very necessary element of design which he used extensively. Also inspired a lot from Delacroix. Remember, he was just coming off from that era. But this one over here, look how beautiful this is. So let's go choose a little hot pink. Actually, let's go get this one. So we come in, we are immediately toned down. We are forced to go through the character, take this curve, we are brought up again, and then we repeat the whole thing over again. Self-contained, just the way a human being should be. So here he's really exploring the sensuality of being human, being female, the feminine aspect of it, without being grossly sexual with it. There's a sense of eroticism with it, but mostly what comes through is the sensuality. And the sensuality also is in the application of the color with the softness of the watercolor, as you can see. The breaking of the form is another element. These are all design elements that he applied very well. And, you know, obviously he's emphasizing shapes, all right? So here's the shape. But there's also this element which is really beautiful, which is sort of like there's a sinewy thing happening this way. So it's all self-contained. That's the beautiful part about it. You don't need a background. The background in itself, for in this case, the white area, all right? And let me just emphasize a few things with this so you understand when you want to do something simple. All this space, okay, as you can see, the distance that it takes for me to travel from here to here is less here, then there's more here, and then there's more here, less here, okay? All this is, on this end, it's tension, okay? And here there's an opening. You see that? So this also is part of the story. This is basically what he's saying here. And by using what we call the negative space, okay, because remember, negative space is another design element that we need in order to emphasize the composition. And he's very clever at using the negative space, as you can see over here, even right down to where he signs it. It's a very important element. Okay, it's a little off to the side. It's quite prominent as a signature, but it's not heavy-handed. Whoops, sorry about that. There we go. So the signature is off to the side. It's a prominent signature. It's fairly large, but it's not heavy-handed, which means the emphasis really is about the drawing and not about him, which I find that very elegant in Matisse's work, and he does that over and over again. All right, so there you have it. That pretty much covers all of the rule of thirds. Remember, golden section and the golden spiral. Now, I'm going to show you something about the golden spiral, and make this your homework. And you can do this when you're doing you're taking your own photographs. Here are all the elements of the golden spiral. This is a compositional element that becomes very important. Everything is divided into thirds. So what we call the rule of 1 to 1. Okay, so it's 1, 2. We repeat this again to 1.6. So it's 1 to 1.6. All right, because this is a sixth of this. So, and here's your nautilus shell. Remember the nautilus shell, and your central focus is right here. Okay, the torso is in the upper part, and the head is all contained within this shape over here. Very clever. This exists in nature. This is why all of these artists are capable of composing things, because they used it to build the Greek pyramids, they used it to build the pantheons, they used it to build your iPhone, your credit cards, everything. A Porsche car, the symmetry of the nautilus shell and the 1 to 1.6 is integrated in a lot of objects, because humans are made that way. And you can see exactly the way they break it down over here. We have a certain form that fits within the physics and confines of nature. All right, so let me go back to another one over here. Oh, here it is. Okay, you can see that in the hurricane. Here's another one. I found these on the internet, by the way, which are great examples. So again, the figure is off to the side, all right? And you have the rules of thirds, 1, 2, and 3, that's being applied over here. All right, this is really the rule of thirds. And within here, each one is broken down, all right? So why am I showing you this one in particular? Because the best way for you to practice your composition is to go and get your iPhone camera or whatever phone camera you have. All right, hey, all right, we had a certain interruption here. Stop. Thank you. I have 3 dogs. So so when you take your phone camera and you do take your photographs, keep that in mind. Keep in mind everything that I just showed you here: the rule of thirds, the golden section, and the golden spiral. And your not only will your photography improve, but your composition with your paintings will improve. Let me show you this one. All right, so you can see the Eiffel Tower. All right, so the 1 to 1.6. This is designed purposely to be that way. You see it in the rows. It's within our ear, you see. Then there's the 1 to 1.6. So this hand will fit into this arm, and then there'll be a 0.6 left over here, or whichever way you want to go. It also works within your fingers. Take your fingers and just break it down into the 1, okay, to 1.6. All right, you'll see it. And then, of course, the universe. All right, because everything in our cosmos is based on this language. So everything we design, everything we wear, all the packaging, everything that basically is all about usage was designed with these elements over here. So let me show you one more. Okay, here we have it. Okay, this is quite obvious. Here again, so we have this line that divides here, here, here. And although in this case, this is a very strong, what I would call golden section that's a little bit off to the side, the implementation of the design elements of color and shape in this small area over here way surpasses the elements of the design that's over here. Besides, this is in the background, sort of like a fade in a fog, and this is really prominent. It's in the foreground. That's all something we can talk about later. And I wanted to show you, here we go, another one that I found. When you're taking photographs, stop putting your figure in the center, put them a little off to the side, and let the backgrounds frame your subject. That's a lot more interesting than having that image that we see all the time with a centrally focused figure in the center of the image. If you are going to put someone in the center, then think of what I just showed you with the Cézanne. And finally, we are going to finish with this, but we will talk about this at some later date. The element of the triangle. Here we go. He's looking up. Okay. She's looking down. Both her eyes are shooting laser beams. We're coming down here again. We're coming down this way. Her glance and the angle of her shoulder is carrying us down again. And here we go. There's an angle here. They're looking at each other, but there's a slight angle that we jump onto this cloud. We get carried back up again, and then we are back here again. So we have like what I call this a diamond formation in my compositions. And if you think you're about to leave the picture plane, you can't, because you have a curtain that's preventing you from leaving. It's also bringing you this way. This curtain is preventing you from leaving, and the glare and the glance is so strong that you're back down here again. These are dead areas, which leads you to the light. And again, strong diagonals, purposely carrying you up towards the heavens, where everything is hunky-glory, apparently. So there you have it. Hope you've enjoyed that. It's about a 15-minute long video. Sorry that it took so long, but there's so much more that we need to cover. But I think if you can start using some of these elements in your own paintings, like I said, definitely use it for photography. Go out there and start shooting. Go to a museum and start looking at all these paintings. Start finding these elements in there. And some quick tips that I kind of want to let you know. The top tips, there's 4 of them. The rule of thirds, okay, works best in rectangles, not squares. When you're composing, aim for a variety of size and spaces, okay? So as you can see, the sizes and the space, aim for a variety of that. You can also do very regular work, that's not a problem, but in terms of making things a lot more interesting, vary your sizes. The scale of the elements, okay, so who's the more prominent figure? The lesser prominent figures, make them smaller, all right? And as you can see in terms of scale, she's prominent. This is small background. and use objects to point at the thing you want people to focus on. And we saw that very clearly in, let's take a look at, let's look at Cezanne again in this painting right here. All right, that was very, those using objects right there. We have a round plate, we have an angle, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there you have it. If you have any questions, you know where to reach me, and I encourage you to work, have fun, take care, and thank you.